Hello? Hello, everyone. No, sorry, one moment. Oh, okay, it's working. Hello, everybody. Good afternoon. Welcome to the spotlight session on bridging the gap in risk-informed decision-making for infrastructure resilience. My name is Sumi from ESCAP, your MC for the session. This session will discuss the existing and emerging challenges and opportunities for building a resilient infrastructure under increasing climate impacts. I would like to first invite Dr. Uma Mahesh Shrakan Rajasekhar, advisor at Urban Resilience Program at CDRI, to deliver the opening remarks. Is Dr. Rajasekhar online?
Hello, good morning, good afternoon, everyone. I hope I'm audible, Sumi. Hello.
Audible.
Okay, thank you very much, and a very warm welcome to all of you, and it's a pleasure being part of this interesting discussion around disaster risk reduction and how information and data can play a key role in it. I would like to thank ESCAP and also our partner ADPC for creating this particular event. As we all know, the recently conducted midterm review of the Sendai framework by UNDRR indicates that the number of people who have been affected by disasters has increased from 2005, 2014 to what it is currently 2012 to 2021. And also the number of people, average number of people who have been affected has been increasing over the last couple of years. The number of critical infrastructure units and facilities which have been destroyed and damaged by disaster averaged to over 140,000 per year in the last 6 years. So while the economic impact of these disasters remains stable, especially the geophysical hazards have remained stable, I think the recent loss due to climate and weather-related events have risen significantly. And this we are observing it as we are speaking. Now many people in Europe are experiencing heat wave, and from India, where I am currently speaking from, people are experiencing extreme flood events. And the average direct economic loss per year from 2015 to 2021 exceeded over $330 billion, and approximately this accounts to 1% of the GDP of these reporting countries. While data-informed decision-making has the potential to improve the accuracy and effectiveness of disaster response, I think they can also inform the adaptation strategy leading to a better sustainable investment in this particular sector. According to the study by McKinsey, organizations that use data-driven decision-making are 5% more productive and 6% more profitable. So investing in disaster risk reduction is not only an additional investment, but actually it saves over the long term. With the advancement of technology and also the proliferation of sensors and monitoring systems, I think the volume and the variety of data which are related to hazards have grown and have been collected significantly in the last 2 decades. And this includes satellite imagery, weather data, and also social media feeds and other things. While these have been these data-driven early warning systems have proven to be highly effective in reducing the impact, I think what we lack right now is how best we can use that to inform decisions on our day-to-day life. How can we inform decisions when it comes to infrastructure investments? How we can use this real-time information to coordinate and inform emergency responses. And even though data-informed decision-making allows for a more cost-benefit analysis when investing in disaster prevention and mitigation efforts. The World Bank estimates that for every $1, I think that will be a $4 saving in cost over a long-term period. All said and done, there remains gap in data collection and analysis at subnational and national level, with very few countries having the capability to use the data to inform their investment processes. The challenge is not only restricted to developing economies. I think the disaggregation of how hazards and risk, as well as disaster impacts, affect differently within different communities within a particular country. And it is very, very essential to understand the vulnerabilities and risks that need to be addressed. However, in the recent time, there has been a progress in modeling risk at a parallel front, and there has also been a notable increase in the number of risk models which have come up. Despite this progress, it is concerning that less than half the countries which have reported to the recent midterm evaluation of the SINDA framework targets have indicated that the present of fit-for-purpose data, accessible and actionable risk information is very, very limited. And data ecosystems, including the disaggregated information, requires to be strengthened, including enhanced interoperability across various systems and various data providers. I hope this session is expected to provide invaluable insights and inspiration from various countries' initiative. It will encourage organizations to collaborate and also encourage data-informed decision-making as we move forward towards achieving the Sustainable Development Goals. At CDRI, we are pleased to join forces with ESCAP and also ADPC to develop tools for modeling risk information and effectively sharing it with national governments and our partner agencies. Furthermore, CDRI also eagerly anticipates partnering with institutions specializing in data metrics and analytics to create tailored training and capacity building modules that provide and promote data-informed decision-making. With that, I thank you all for attending this session and looking forward for the upcoming discussions. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Rajashekar, for providing such good food for thought in understanding gaps and opportunities in risk-informed decision-making. I would like to now invite Mr. Aslam Pervez, Deputy Executive Director of Asian Disaster Preparedness Center, to provide his opening remarks.
Thank you, Sahi, and thank you very much for all of us who have been able to join here. Yeah, number of meetings happening, and thanks, Uma, for a very insightful thought there. I actually was last couple of days at the G20 meeting, and one of the focus in G20 meeting, there is a disaster risk reduction working group. The same topic and repeatedly being discussed there, and particularly more from the angle that how best we can have data which will help us process for better decision making. And that subject perhaps is not new. I think on my experience working with ADPC for almost 15 years, and of course lately together with ESCAP, this whole issue about integrating disaster data, climate risk into development policy and planning has been the case much before the Sendai framework. During the Hugo framework, we talked about it. And even today, when we are looking at it, and I practically, actually as a team leader together with CDRI at this moment, is involved in a study in a couple of countries looking at the funding gap assessment and the impact of disaster on critical infrastructure. And he really asked me that what has changed from the last 15 years of my own experience. I think I'm still standing at the same crossroad, looking at how best I can get, mine and utilize data that is needed to help policymaker giving a good at least a good prediction or a good estimate that even for basic critical infrastructure such as road, energy, and others, what would be the requirement? There are a number of percentages we are talking. I mean, in terms of if we invest one, how much actually we can save in recovery reconstruction. You also know now that at least for the next 2 decades, by 2050, the number of infrastructure development that will happen would almost what we have done for the last 200 years. So the pace of the infrastructure development is very, very high. That will happen with or without the kind of risk data that is needed. And because it is the requirement, each of the countries going, but the danger is that if you go without having a proper assessment and investment in a futuristic risk assessment, these infrastructure very likelihood to cause more risk and more vulnerabilities than to solve the problem. That is why I think when talk about risk-informed decisions, we should also really look at it that we have to go beyond only targeting resilient infrastructure from a disaster risk reduction perspective, but we also have to look at and harness the economic development aspect of it. I think the other study very recently, I mean, these are all, I'm not quoting any of the study because it's available in a public domain, and we are also aware that perhaps in the next 2 decades, if there is a $3 trillion requirement for infrastructure, 80% will be actually invested by the private sector. Now, when we talk about risk-informed or risk-sensitive decision-making, how much we really are considering that the information about future risk or the present risk is also being shared and discussed with the private sector who actually is going to invest. Yes, a lot of innovations, a lot of advancement we saw in the APDRR report and the discourse yesterday. A lot of advancement in terms of the tools for at least guiding us in terms of early warning and others has happened. But in terms of the kind of data that actually is needed to do a robust modeling, coming up with a very good estimate that what would be a fiscal deficit in case of disaster that we have seen in Turkey, or we have in recent times in India, even the successive flooding, like for example, everyone is talking about the flood in Pakistan of 2 years and now again this year. But even if you simply look at that, my country, India, and the capital, New Delhi, if you have seen for the last 5-10 years, and if you go now, and particularly by September, when the G20 summit will take place, you will see a complete change in the infrastructure. You have now, complete new infrastructure in both in terms of services, but also the infrastructure that will actually house a lot of private and other ones. But last couple of weeks, even now, I think even yesterday, what you see, flooding, which is actually causing and disrupting the business. The whole idea, I'm not saying that those constructions or those infrastructure has not been developed looking at some of the higher level risk, but I think there's a lot of underlying risk that we should also look about it. So this is from a critical infrastructure, and when we also talk about critical infrastructure and risk-informed decision, we should also not forget about the socio-economic conditions and the indicators. We should not only talk about economic indicators, but we should also look at how much information, how much decisions are being made for developing better roads or better hospitals or better bridges that actually also look at the marginalized group. They also look at some of the socially vulnerable group, whether these are farmers, whether these are people with different difficult abilities. So we should also look at this whole issue of inclusiveness within infrastructure development, and for that I think the continuous attempt and the effort by ESCAP developing different portals, different data set and information that at least whatever improvement in terms of the sex aggregated data or the other data set should be done. I will just end here by saying that perhaps we will discuss in a number topic here, but we should also pick up some of the key takeaways and the easy takeaways. We are here in this building, perhaps the easy takeaway would be to look at left and right, what is available within ESCAP, and then comes to CDRI, then comes to many other organizations. So I would also urge you that a number of tools and things has been developed within ESCAP. We should also look at how best this actually we can use, promote, and help government. Otherwise, developing every time a new tool also is not a very good way forward. So with that, thank you very much, Sohi, for this opportunity, and I look for my next role slightly later. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Pervez. And I think that will lead us very smoothly into the technical presentations where we will see how we can harness data for helping make decisions that not only help us with disaster risk reduction, but also make social and economic gains. With that, I would like to next invite Dr. Uma Mahesh Shravan Rajasekhar from Urban Resilience Program at CDRI to present on risk-informed decision-making for resilience of critical infrastructure.
Thank you. I hope everybody is able to see the screen. And so what I would like to take you through some of the work which CDRI is currently undertaking in the area of disaster risk reduction and more in the area of adaptation. So CDRI is a coalition of membership which includes governments. There are 31 country governments which has extended their participation, and there are also 6 international organizations and 2 private sector organizations. We work closely with some of the MDBs and also UN agencies in ensuring that disaster resilience is ensured within all future upcoming investments of infrastructure. So the key mandate for us to work with these partners is to deliver on global, regional, and local knowledge platforms for disaster and climate resilient infrastructure. It is also aligned with the 2030 agenda and also the accelerated sustainable development goals and climate actions and DRR mandate. We are also mandated to provide technical assistance and ensure capacity enhancement across our member countries and partners. And how do we mainstream all this from the lens of gender and also social inclusion is the other key agenda. As we were talking earlier, there is a plan. The global countries are going to invest more than $80 trillion in the next 15 years in infrastructure. And by 2050, if we are not taking care of the Paris Agreement goals, or if we are not ensuring that we do it in a sustainable manner, there is a possibility of huge amount of loss. Close to 88% of the total adaptation, which is currently being looked at, it's being attributed to the infrastructure, and out of which huge amount of money is already getting wasted. Close to $390 to $600 billion are getting wasted due to disruptions in infrastructure, especially within the low and middle income countries. More and more information is informing us that the pathway or the current progress, what we are achieving, still lacks improved data collection and statistical analysis to enable country to take the right decision. So we are at the, like this previous speaker, Aslamji did mention that we are at the crossroads right now. And for us to avoid the loss, it is not only about investing in the infrastructure, but also the infrastructure providing you dividends over time. For us to avoid such losses, it's very, very essential for us to do that in an informed manner, especially the risk-informed manner, and for the whole world to take benefit of it. So in order to do that, CDRI focuses on critical infrastructure sector, which includes power, telecom, transport, health. And also we have a specific focus towards urban. And across these things, we try to promote disaster risk financing. We also provide capacity building and training. We try to promote nature-based solutions and ensure better standards and certifications to and also support infrastructure governance and finally the early warning systems. One of the initiatives which we are doing is across for infrastructure for resilient island states, and this is focused towards all the 52 SIDS, the small island development states, and they are currently faced with challenge in terms of looking at the impacts and also creating plans and adequately managing their investments. So what we are focusing is on improved resilience of SIDS infrastructure, especially towards climate change and disaster risks. And this we are doing through strengthening knowledge and partnership. We recently announced a call for proposal, and more than 50 EYs expression of interest have been received from more than 28 SIDS. And much of their requests are coming in terms of risk-informed policy and planning. How do they go about it? Early warning systems and access to disaster risk financing. Within power infrastructure, one of the critical things which we are realizing more and more, much of the power infrastructure, especially in the coastal areas, are not designed for the extreme wind speeds. With climate change and also with the intensity of the cyclone activity increasing across the world, I think there is a larger need to make sure that there is a continued transmission and distribution of energy across various places. And we are looking in terms of traditional power infrastructure and how they are differentially impacted, and how can we integrate disaster resilience governance within that particular sector through better advisories and capacity building programs. One of the key things which we are doing in this particular sector is also informing the early warning systems. Right now, of course, globally, we are all working towards reaching the last mile connectivity when it comes to early warning systems. But there is no specific warnings which are being provided to these infrastructure managers. So we are right now working with the community of practice and thinking about how we can inform hydropower managers, how we can inform power distribution companies in terms of taking informed decisions when it comes to heat waves, extreme rainfall, cyclones, etc. The other key aspect which we are realizing more and more is the connectivity. I think when the airports, seaports, and critical transportation network gets affected, especially during an extreme weather event, it also makes it difficult for relief and response to reach them in time. So one of the key things which are doing is with respect to the airport, where more than 111 airports were analyzed across 53 participating countries. And one of the key things which is emerging is more and more there is a need for vulnerability and risk assessment and resilience strategy for global airports. Right now this is being done in a very micro level, but I think some of the airports which are disrupted even for 3 to 5 days has experiences huge loss. And the most important thing is also achieving connectivity when there is a disaster. So when these airports are supposed to function to receive and to also provide response, the failure can become much more devastating and lead to a cascading effect. Telecommunication sector resilience program is something which CDRA has been doing both at an asset scale and also at a system scale. Right now, what we have realized is telecom infrastructure there are very few standards, codes, and operational mechanisms which are available to establish these telecom towers. And the importance of mobile phone connectivity during a disaster is quite high. And failure of these infrastructure also creates a lot of anxiety within friends and families. So we are currently doing a national and subnational disaster risk and resilience assessment to create a roadmap for the telecommunication sector and how they can use this information to inform their future investments and also in terms of establishing their tasks. The other thing is the health infrastructure resilience program. And I think we all realized, globally, how important is the hospital network, and this was realized during the COVID-19. But more importantly, what we are realized is, these hospitals, also the resilience of these hospitals during disaster is going to be very, very critical. The functioning of these hospitals, especially during cyclone, during floods, during heat waves, so on and so forth. So we have developed a framework in collaboration with WHO and also with GIZ in trying to help doctors and also engineers do the resilience assessment of hospitals and how we can mainstream it, in some of the critical places. And we have started our work in Sikkim, and we are planning to extend it to high mountain region. The new area which CDRI will be venturing into is more work around urban flooding and urban extreme heat. So more and more we are realizing that data and tools to inform urban planning and development is missing, and how we can build that through not only informing infrastructure investors, but also city officials and managers. As I indicated earlier, the early warning systems are currently targeted towards community. And I think we are still looking forward to filling in that gap. But for CDRI, it is also how early warning can inform infrastructure managers, urban managers, and so on and so forth, and how we can also strategically identify location and type of nature-based solutions which can help in minimizing the risk within urban areas. All this can only be done if there is a financing for disaster risk resilience. And that's where we are working in areas of informing new investments and also identifying various alternative financing risk reduction strategies, and also how we can promote risk insurance. And currently we are working across 4 states and 4 countries in developing a physical risk assessment tool. This we are doing it with the ADPC. And we are also currently developing a tool to inform India's national infrastructure pipeline, which is close to a $1 trillion investment done by the country government. And we are trying to develop a tool to inform that investment, how they can make it risk resilient. Finally, I would want to just highlight that our flagship report is up and coming, and this is CDRI's biennial report, which focuses on estimating the global disaster and climate risk, especially towards infrastructure. It also provides insights into what government can do in terms of building resilience, and also identifying various alternatives, both in terms of policy and finance, but also more importantly around nature-based solutions. And finally, what we are also planning to launch as part of this particular report is an open access to interactive and interoperable data platform. And this is going to be a global data on risk covering 6 key natural hazards across 8 key infrastructural elements. So we look forward to taking it, scaling it up, and also transferring the risk knowledge to various member countries and also partner agencies working in this particular sector. And we'll look forward to your cooperation and participation in that process. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Rajasekhar. I would just at this stage like to introduce our very important facilitator, Ms. Naina, who's sitting right here. She will be helping all of us to keep to our times with her cue cards. So we will all be able to see that. And for online speakers, we will be writing the time in the chat. And next, I would like to introduce Dr. Seneca Basa Nayaka, Director of Climate Resilience at ADPC, to make a presentation on urban resilience to climate extremes.
Thank you, Sumi. So I'll stand and I will present from here. And thanks. Good afternoon. So I'm going to present building urban resilience to climate extremes, the experiences that we have learned from a project which we have been implementing in Vietnam, funded by Norwegian government, which is NORAD. So the urban settings and associated critical infrastructure are highly vulnerable as well as exposed to climate extremes, which we have seen over the years, we have witnessed. And so then therefore, so we need to work together to improve the resilience of the urban settings as well as the associated infrastructure, critical infrastructure, as the frequency and intensity of climatic extremes are increasing due to climate change. So this photo we have taken from Mito, so our project team, so while we were sitting there. So you can see the photo itself, it tells the story. You can see that, you know, the city is more highly vulnerable as well as exposed to the climate extremes because of their informal settlements. So why Mito or Namdin? So that's the question that we ask ourselves. And of course, we discuss with the government authorities, that's Vietnam National Disaster Management Authority and other stakeholders, because we wanted to select cities which are more vulnerable for extremes, so the hazards, which are having multiple hazards. So the good thing is, like, you know, when we were discussing, so we thought of, like, you know, selecting the cities which are in deltaic region. So you all know that, no, deltaic regions, so they are having multiple issues, the hazards. So the country like Vietnam, of course, strong winds due to typhoons, as well as associated rains, the river and flood, as well as they have issues with river erosion, and then for tidal floods, so on and so forth. So it's a kind of, like, you know, multiple hazards that they are facing. So the second, of course, thing is, like, you know, we wanted to select a secondary city, so which is in middle size, so that, you know, we can help them to improve the capacity, so that, you know, they can cope up with the extremes to the future. So this is the reason that we selected these cities. You can see from here, we prepared these maps, by the way, and we have sort of map all this, you know, critical infrastructure. You can see the schools are there, hospitals are there, power stations are there, power transmission lines, and the roads, and so on and so forth. So if you see the population density as of 2019, as it is mentioned, is also quite heavy. So this is the selection that we had, and let's see how the so this justifies our selection. Justifies, if you look at this, you know, the future situations, the climate scenarios to the, you know, in these cities. So the upper panel shows Namdin and the lower one Mito. So upper panel, it has two sub panels, as you can see, the temperature and the rainfall. So this is from, of course, multimodal mean. That's also RCP, by the way. It's a little bit old though. So now we have SSP, but it tells the story. So if you see the temperature in Namdin, so of course, as we expect, it is increasing to the future, but it's quite higher than Mito, if you see the lower panel. So the color is, like, you know, green to yellow to even brown. And if you see the rainfall change to the future, that is actually to the mid-century as well as the end of century. So the Namdin situation is, it doesn't change much, but whereas the Mito is going to be changed a lot. So maybe the Namdin may be facing more and more issues with related to extreme temperature, heat waves, Whereas this other one, like, Mito, so they might be facing, they will be facing some other floods and other things. So this is the selection that we had. It is very well justified with the future situations as well. Next, please. Okay, what we did after that, actually, we closely worked with these organizations. So provincial governments, city authorities, people's committee in those cities. And then we collected the data and we did full scale hazard mapping. So this shows you the hazard maps which we developed for near future 2030 as well as far future 2080. So the question comes to you now, how we develop future scenario, the hazards. What we did actually, we selected the most suitable general circulation or global circulation model, GCM, out of 35. And then we further downscale into the city level by 1 kilometer. And then that rainfall information, we fed into the hydrological model. And of course, after getting the flows, we have we have taken this, the flood, what is the hydraulic model to get the flow. So the color, it says that the lighter color, it says the flood depth. By the way, these are flood depths. So the darker the color, of course, the higher the level. So you can see that from the contrast from near future to the far future is going to be quite heavy. So the lot of floods will happen in those cities. So Namdin situation is a little bit different. So you don't see the color contrast. So as it is also, it was mentioning, I mentioned already the future scenarios, the rainfall doesn't change much. Okay, the solutions. So now we know the situation in these cities. So we have done what you call the hazard assessment. By the way, we also collected, I need one moment. We also collected the data, that's the exposure data and volumetric data. So we have also done the risk assessment. Those are being validated. So that's why I'm not presenting here. So we are presenting only the hazard. As a solution, as we have been discussing in this forum, so we need to help them to support them, risk-informed decision making. What we did actually, the first measure that we have taken with them, of course, to improve the early warning system. As you know that early warning systems, the conventional early warning systems, or the forecast, it gives only the meteorological or weather parameters. If a typhoon is coming, so the conventional forecast says typhoon is approaching, so next 24 hours is going to be 100 millimeter rainfall. The winds will be 100 kilometers per hour, gusting up to 160. So that doesn't really much useful for the people who are at the ground, fishermen or other people. So what we have been trying actually to introduce impact forecasting, it gives not what the weather will be, what the weather will do. So that's the impact. So if a typhoon is approaching, if you can tell the people your city is going to be inundated next 24 hours, 1 meter, so that's useful for them, for the local authorities to take the people out, even for the people there. So it has few elements, of course. It's a combination of hazard, again, exposure and vulnerability. It's basically risk assessment. So this is the approach that we used. Next, please. And then ADPC, we developed this portal. It's not a portal, actually, decision support system, actually, is color coded. Of course, these colors, green, yellow, amber, and the red. So it is color coded, and it's also tagged with matrix. The matrix, the risk matrix, 4x4 matrix, it is impact versus livelihood. So when a typhoon is approaching, so the forecaster can tag this one, and then they can select which color is suitable for that particular city. This is actually Mito, by the way, that area, tangent area. You can see color areas. If it is red, of course, the red color, that matrix is tagged with the actions, what they need to take. And we can also get population density or the total population from this map. So it's easy for the forecaster meteorologist or the forecaster to issue a warning. So this software, that decision support system, can be used to trigger the warning and then inform the local authorities to take action. So the next, please. So the next is what we did, actually, next measure that we have been discussing with them, of course, to do sort of risk sensitive urban planning. So we were able to find the spatial development plan that they have developed from 2014 to 2030. And now we can compare the future situations, flood situation, the same city, which we have done. And as I was mentioning, we have also done risk assessment. So they have the zoning, they have done the zoning, actually. If you can see the zone 1, actually, is quite safe. like, it's not because of the dike, because they have the dike system. So, but zone 2 and 3, so they are proposing by 2030 to have more industrial zones. So if you see this, the map, the right-hand side is going to be inundated. So they need to make some measures, and according to they can revisit this, the what you call the master plan, or they can look like, they can work on to control the flood in those cities. Okay, I'm going to complete the presentation. So this is actually the overall situation. What we did actually, we wanted to measure the resilience, city resilience. So we have adopted the CRI, City Resilient Index, developed by Arup, but it's a kind of like, very complex one. So it has 4 domains, 12 goals, and 52 indicators. We have selected only 13 indicators. So to sort of contribute, or like, the way the interventions that we are doing, for example, improving early warning systems, improving community readiness, improving sectoral preparedness, as well as governance. So this is the situation as of 2022, mid 2022 May. So, and then Namdin and Mito, we are going to measure this, again at the end of the project to understand the improvement. So the bottom line is actually understanding future climate is very important, as well as we are supporting, like, we are discussing here, of course, to bridge the gaps in risk-informed decision-making for infrastructure resilience. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Seneca, for sharing all these initiatives from ADPC. Now, I would like to pass the mic to my colleague, Ms. Madhu Sarkar Swaisgood, who will showcase Risk and Resilience Portal.
Have the mic here. All good. So while the presentation is coming up, I first want to thank, of course, CDRI and ADPC for organizing this session with us. And I think what we have really seen in this session is the wealth of information and data that is available. And I think one of the key things that from our side we really want to take forward is, how do we bring all this together for countries and policymakers to access, and then take that into their governance and regulations. So what I want to kind of do is, I of course want to brief you on the Risk and Resilience portal that we have developed, but I also want to sort of encourage you, especially when we have the panel session, to start thinking about how to bring these together so that we can really have a systematic way of addressing the big climate issues that are coming our way, and to really try and see how we can help put it all together. So just to begin with, I just wanted to start with noting that our Asia Pacific Disaster Report launched yesterday. And I think Mr. Aslam was kind enough to refer to it. So the Asia Pacific Disaster Report really talks about seizing the moment. This is the moment now for climate resilience before it's too late, and really focusing on some of the key sectors that are critical to improving and sustaining lives, livelihoods, and our economies. So as you have seen, one of the ways to really seize this moment is to use the technology and the advances in technology that are available now and that are at our disposal to help policymakers understand, as Dr. Seneca said, what the climate will do, not just what it will be. So as you may know, in 2021, ESCAP launched the Risk and Resilience Portal, and day before yesterday, we launched the upgraded version of this portal. Thanks. And this portal, our driving mission was really to update the portal to look at how we can translate the global IPCC models, the new global IPCC models, which I think Dr. Seneca also referred to, and how to translate these into actionable regional disaster and climate strategies, especially for important sectors like infrastructure. Next. So just a brief background on the portal ecosystem. It's really built on an interoperable methodology using multiple automated scripts, which bring together various data on hazards, infrastructure, socioeconomic data, et cetera, exactly what Mr. Aslam was referring to as well. And really visualize how the changes in global patterns translates into floods, drought, heat waves, and tropical cyclones for our regions and for our sectors. Next. So I think Dr. Uma was talking about airports. I just saw this in the news yesterday, and I think it's actually CDRI report as well. So I just saw this in the news yesterday, and Indian airports are increasingly vulnerable to natural hazards. And like Dr. Uma said, this will only increase under various climate scenarios. So the portal can actually show you where the risks to the airports lie. I'm sorry, I think my circles are a little bit off, but it can really show you where the risks lie. So if you look on the top, it's the current at baseline, where the risks from cyclones and flooding is. And then you see 2-degree warming, where the risks from cyclones and flooding is. And here in the portal, you can compare and see where the risks are increasing. For example, you see here that in India, the inland airports will be much more under flooding impact. So using this tool, policymakers really can start to build infrastructure today that takes into account what the climate will do tomorrow. Next, please. So I think, again, Mr. Aslam referred to this as well. Throughout this week and in the space that we're in, we have discussed inclusiveness for women, youth, and people who are disabled. And social infrastructure, such as healthcare infrastructure, as well as schools, they also double as shelters when disasters strike. So it's really important to know which facilities will be more exposed in the coming years. So if we're talking about investment and financing, we can start by targeting those facilities that are most at risk and to really build resilience in those facilities. I'm going to be running over a little bit. Next. Similarly, with energy infrastructure, we do the same thing. Next. So one of the most interesting things that I think Dr. Seneca just showed was how ADPC downscaled the climate models. And we've been doing similar thing with our project in Maldives. This is also on the portal, that we have downscaled the global climate models, which are 100 by 100 kilometers, to a 5 by 5 resolution for Maldives. And as you can see, Maldives will be suffering from sea level rise. But if you look at the current scenario today, and if you look at the power plants today, none of it seems to be really at risk. But as soon as you move into the downscale, looking at the downscale climate models, you can see how much of power plants, for example, will be at risk at Maldives. And so here we really can now start building more adaptive strategies for resilient infrastructure. Next. So in our updated portal, we also have launched a new tool called the SDG Action Tracker. This is all the SDG data on indicators related to disaster impacts on infrastructure. And by combining the SDG action tracker with the risk analytics I showed you before on infrastructure exposure and vulnerabilities, now you can start making those informed decisions in crafting resilient strategies for infrastructure, and then monitor how efficient was the implementation, how, if there's a change in a government strategy, how efficient was that strategy in understanding the SDG achievement in the next 5 to 7 years. So these are some of the things that, oh, sorry, next. These are some of the key updates and things that we wanted to showcase from the portal. And I think you can also go to the portal, or we have a booth upstairs that you can go explore the portal more. Thank you very much. And I'd be happy to answer any questions. Thanks.
Thank you very much, Madhu. And with that, I would like to now pass the mic to Mr. Aslam to lead the panel discussion.
Thank you very much. Very difficult task, because I have to also give honor to people who are sitting here. They certainly don't want to just give us 2-3 minutes extra than what you had earlier planned. We have now a panel with some people here in the room. On my right, Ms. Phuong Ly Than Le from Vietnam. Ms. Seng Phon. And then, of course, we have online Mr. Bipin Prakash from Fiji. Then Ms. Jinsum Lim from IEA, and Dr. Shailesh Gupta, Municipal Corporation from India. I think let me start from Mr. Bipin Prakash, if you are there. So good evening for you. Perhaps it would already be your dinner time there. I think we just wanted to, based on the discussion that you had, we just wanted to hear how your reflection by a question that I wanted to pose, which is how can climate service support strengthening resilience in infrastructure and infrastructure development to adapt to the impact of climate change and natural disasters. Over to you, and perhaps 2 to 3 minutes, Mr. Bipin.
Thank you very much, moderator. I hope you can hear me well.
Can.
Okay, great. So, well, it's well past the dinner time here in Fiji. So good night from Fiji. Good evening, good afternoon to everyone. So, as far as, resilient infrastructure development is concerned, climate services can offer a number of things, in particular climate data and information. So national meteorological and hydrological services around the world, they keep a very long and very pretty good archive of historical data, which can support in the development and the design of infrastructure. So for example, if you would like to plan, for example, a bridge, based on your historical data, you would probably make a good design which would ensure that it is able to withstand the current the current climate variability, but as well as ensure that we at times to ensure that the infrastructure is resilient enough, we at times over design it. So the cost of over design we have to also keep in mind. So I guess if we are able to make use of meteorological data and any data which supports such development, then it should be looked into. Now with climate change, I think the focus should also be into looking at how the historical data can be overlaid with climate change projections to ensure that while we are planning for what was happening in the past, we also prepare for the future as well. I can give you an example from Fiji. Recently, we had a major foreshore development a resort, whereby based on the climate change projection, this island called Naisoso Island, it was the island was raised by a meter to factor the sea level rise projections of up to close to a meter by the end of this century. So based on the lifetime of the infrastructure, which is, it's expected to be more than 50 years. So based on that, it was decided that the island would be raised by a meter. I think in terms of to ensure that, people make use of such data, it is important that we promote open access to data. Sometimes what is happening, and in fact, World Meteorological Organization is actively pushing for open access to data. So I think to ensure that data is available and used, is that we ensure that it's openly available. Another thing which probably needs to be looked into is investment in meteorological observations. Often what happens is that people are more focused on the end products and services, but there's very few investment in meteorological observations. And finally, I think the last point I would want to touch on is data rescue efforts. So meteorological observations and, which can inform, infrastructure development and design. There's a lot of observations which are still in paper format and which needs to be rescued and, digitized. So in conclusion, I would say that, the climate data and information, it has potential to inform resilient infrastructure development. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Vipian. I think very insightful observations and suggestion. While we start this session, it looked like that we jumped one session before us. So Dr. Uma, if you are still there, don't be disheartened. We will be back immediately after we finish the moderated session. So I certainly would hand it over back to you through Sohi. Now the next two panelists that we have is he's sitting here. So Ms. Phuong, I think the question that I would like you to take is, what are the key challenges in utilizing data and technology for risk resilience infrastructure planning? Over to you.
Thank you for the question, and good morning, everyone. To my knowledge, some key challenges for this issue in my country is the first, data collection and accessibility might be limited or fragmented, making it challenging to have a comprehensive understanding of potential risks. Vietnam's climate data lack of long-term consistent, and some data from the last 2 decades handwritten, hindering the identification of environmental change. This issue stems from inadequate monitoring stations equipped with outdated hardware. The second is about integration of data source, ensuring interoperability and compatibility among different data sets is crucial for holistic view of risks. However, in my country, lacks technology to analyze the data from multiple sources. Each state agency handle data differently, leading to incoherent data formats. For example, infrastructure information in Nanding and Metro-City that IDBC had a research. The provincial agency will manage Department of Natural Resource and Environment, the Department of Construction, the Department of Transport, and some city level agencies. Integrating data from various sources in my country quite challenging. Another example for this issue is that the Ministry of Natural Resource and Environment enact Vietnam means scenario of climate change and sea level rise. However, the outcome of this scenario readily apply in urban planning projects belonging to Ministry of Constructions Management because of scarcity of technology and of obligatory regulation. Cost and resource constraints is also another challenging. Limited budget in Vietnam could hinder the adoption of advancement data and technology solutions for risk-sensitive infrastructure planning. Therefore, keeping up with rapid advancement and in technology like AI or Internet of Things is very difficult. Even viral tools like GIS and the set of hydro and hydraulics model might and other tools ensuring quality of environment of the evaluation have not widely applied in planning projects as well as urban management. Vietnam also face a scarcity of skilled professionals capable of handling and updating data utilizing disaster warning and climate change technologies. Although some international organizations have spawned for some cities in Vietnam, for example, Cần Thơ, to develop flood simulation models, but the lack of local expert hamper data update once the projects conclude. As urban development rapid progress, and though model risks become outdated and unsuitable for actual urban development scenarios. So in short, due to these key challenges, in Vietnam, long-term urban infrastructure strategies integrated extensive climate change scenario for the next 30 or 100 years remain very difficult for create. Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Fang. And now let me quickly move to Lao, Ms. Phê Von Sangphon. Lao, of course, in recent times has huge investment on critical infrastructure, including high-speed road. I think the question more is that, how these infrastructure development are inclusive of the needs and the vulnerabilities of the community.
Good evening, everybody. First of all, I want to introduce myself. My name is Phê Von Sangphon. I come from Ministry of National Resource and Environment. And in my opinion, I think should here some way to ensure that resilient infrastructure is screening and address the needs of vulnerable community. Educate this vulnerable community early in the planning process. This will help to ensure that their needs are considered and the infrastructure is designed in a way that is accessible and accessible for everyone. Use inclusive design principle, the main design infrastructure that is accessible to people of all ability, including those with disability, the elderly and pensioned women. Consider the needs of different culture and community. This including like providing access to request facility, cultural center, and another important country resource. And make sure that the infrastructure is affordable. This is especially important for a vulnerable community who may not be able to afford to pay for expensive infrastructure upgrade. Provide training and support to help a vulnerable community use the infrastructure. This could include things like providing training on how to use new technology or how to access emergency service. By following this principle, we can ensure that resilient infrastructure is inclusive and address the needs of our community. Here are some additional things to consider. Thank you. Make sure that infrastructure is the local, is in area that's accessible to vulnerable community. This could include things like building infrastructure in the area that are close to public transportation or that are accessible by the foot or bicycle. I consider the needs of vulnerable community during the disaster recovery podcast, the cost in security like providing temporary housing, food, and water to those who have been displaced by a disaster. And the last, we work with vulnerable community to develop long-term disaster risk reduction plan. This will help to ensure and this community are preparing for the future disaster and that they can recover more quickly. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Fevon. Now, I think we have two online interventions. My next panelist is Ms. Jensun Lim from IEA. Are you there?
Yes, I'm here. Can you hear me?
Yes, and hopefully that you are within a comfortable time zone, perhaps in Abu Dhabi, if it is the headquarter. The guiding question that we would like to pose to you is how should countries effectively bring disaster and climate information into decision-making to increase the resilience of infrastructure? Over to you, Ms.
Thank you very much. Actually, I'm currently based in Paris. Our headquarters is based in Paris. So we are around 11 a.m. So it's comfortable time zone. I just want to mention about the public sector's role in terms of the bringing in disaster risk and climate information into decision making, particularly emphasizing the roles of governments and international organizations based on the energy sector's examples. First of all, I would like to emphasize the role of the importance of the improved climate risk and impact assessments. As the previous speakers all mentioned, there was a notable progress in climate science and projections, but energy suppliers and consumers still have difficulties in using climate data and models. One of the major reasons is the lack of availability of climate information at smaller geographic and temporal scales, which already ADPC and ESCAP emphasize what they are currently doing and how much they are important for the planning and investment for the infrastructure. But even if they are available, sometimes the information is not publicly available or hard to find or challenging to interpret. I would like to emphasize how much it is important to provide them a good interpretation of those kind of data, because even when energy suppliers and consumers have access to downscaled and public available information, it remains very challenging to link the complex probabilistic information to industry-specific applications and management tools while addressing a significant level of embedded uncertainty of the climate projections. For instance, you can imagine that if there is a heat waves, definitely some of the solar PV panels or electricity networks, they could be heavily affected. But even among the solar PV panels, there are some of the additional cooling methods are already attached to the solar PV panels, or even for the electricity networks, depending on whether they are underground cables or overhead cables, the level of the vulnerability might be very, very different. And also the insulation materials for the use for the cables, electricity network, and how they are located and how they are structured. Those are all affecting the level of the climate impacts and vulnerability. So these kind of interpretation of the climate data into the decision making is very much needed, but these kind of very downscaled and technically very specific interpretation is still missing. So public sectors like governments and regulators and international organizations can support climate risk and impact assessments by providing data which are publicly available and also sufficiently downscaled and translated into variables that are relevant to the energy sector stakeholders. Secondly, I would like to emphasize that we should mainstream climate information into decision-making process, particularly through the policy frameworks, which will be really important to send the strong signals to build the climate resilience policies have a critical role to play because energy providers have a direct interest in protecting their own assets and providing more reliable services. But the true cost of the climate impacts may not be accurately understood by them. When a climate-driven disruption occurs, such as power outages due to the floods, the significant socioeconomic cost of interrupted energy supply spreads across the society, often disproportionately affecting vulnerable groups. But energy providers bear only a fraction of the entire cost. Effective policy measures are very much needed to ensure the climate resilience. And also governments are responsible for setting the policy framework that supports investments and actions to strengthen resilience. Although many countries have already started to build a policy framework by integrating climate resilience measures and also considerations into their policy plannings. But still in some cases, national plans may be insufficient to consider the climate resilience and adaptation disaster risk reductions in the energy sector to cope with the estimated level of the climate risks. As you can imagine, a country with a high level of the climate hazard should consider more about the climate resilience measures, while a country with a lower level of the disaster risk may pay less attention to these kind of issues. So we conducted the assessment how much IEA member and association countries are prepared against the level of the climate hazard they will face. Around 30% of our member and association countries may be insufficiently prepared for the climate risks they may be expected. Given the level of the climate risk is increasing, so we believe that this climate disaster preparedness in the policy are very much important. But according to the WMO's assessment last year, only 40% of the 194 submitted NDCs prioritize adaptation in the energy sector, while the most of the energy plans and energy targets are really very much concentrated in the mitigation targets only. So we would like to emphasize the resilience and adaptation, disaster risk reduction, climate resilience should be considered in the energy policies and planning. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Considering the time constraint, I think a very important point raised by Jill. I think I have now the last panelist, Dr. Shailesh Yadav. And thank you very much, Dr. Shailesh Yadav, for the patience. I think I would slightly reformat the question. Instead of countries, perhaps you come from highly vulnerable states in India. So from your own experience, how use of technologies from an urban resilience that we would like to drive some of this information into the public decision-making process. Over to you, Dr. Saleh.
Thank you, Mr. Pervez. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear, but
yeah,
we can.
Yeah, actually, I wanted to show a small 6-7 slides presentation. Can I share my screen, if it can be enabled, so that for the sake of completion?
Yeah, we can't see the screen.
I'm not able to share, but yesterday I've shared the presentation there. If that can be played, then probably everybody can see.
Okay.
Yesterday during the trial run, I shared it.
You can turn on your camera. This is what they are requesting. Is your camera on?
Yeah, camera is on.
Okay, the presentation is here.
Okay, so if that can be played from your end, because I'm not able to share it. Okay, thank you. Thank you. So I'll be speaking about this burning topic. Basically, as Ms. Swicegood was showing some pictures of Ahmedabad yesterday. So if we can go to the next slide. Next slide, please. So basically the urban floods, this is about regarding my city, Agartala city. This is a very old city, 150 years old, with a population of around 0.6 million, which is slated to go to 1.3 million by 2060. We receive a very heavy rainfall of 220 centimeters per year, and almost 7 months of the year it's raining. And being the capital city of one of the northeastern states of India, this is the center of administration, culture, economy. It takes a heavy toll. We can go to the next one, please. Now, now these are some of the pictures from last 2-3 months. Okay, one is Delhi. Why Delhi is flooded? This is from newspapers here, Times of India. Now, if you see, there are 10 regions mentioned here. The serial number 3 to 9, they are actually anthropogenic. These have been created by us. Deposition of silt, dams, many dams, so many bridges all over the river, encroachment on wetlands, encroachment of floodplains, garbage dumps on the floodplains, and storm waters are not able to discharge water. Now, the Gurgaon, these are just one of them is 15 July, others are in March. This is our one of the biggest IT hubs. And after half an hour of rain, they have to close down everything for say 1 day, sometimes even 2 days. So next one, please. The reasons are pretty simple. Some regions which are beyond our control, like the first two. Topographical regions, sometimes the cities are shaped like that. Some part of the cities are depressed, like my city. The center of the city is saucer shaped and excessive rainfall. Others are in our control, unplanned development, inadequate attention to stormwater drainage because it is considered a very unglamorous sector, whereas this is the most basic of the things which need to be done. Encroachments, constructions on the natural drainage because the natural drainage, sometimes they are privately owned properties. Then the real-time monitoring and decision making is also not happening. Next one, please. Now, our experience is like this. I have marked in blue 4, serial number 1 and last 3. These are basically using technology and climate risk information to deal with this problem. Others are administrative measures like removal of encroachment, construction of more stormwater drainage, then amendment of building bylaws to prevent constructions on the natural drainage, and scheduled desilting of all our stormwater drainage. These are the most basic things, but they are ignored, and that's why it leads to situation which you have seen in news. But there are other things like stormwater drainage. The cities in India, most of the cities, they have not worked on it. It needs a proper topographical survey and a rainfall analysis as per guidelines in force in India for last 30 years. Rains have to be considered. And if even after all this, if things are not working in their low-lying area, then you have to use other methods like mechanical pumping of the water, the rainwater. And because during the rains and storms, the power goes away, then you have to have dual pumping systems which use diesel also, along with sensors which can automatically turn and switch. So these are what we are doing actually on ground in Agartala. Go to the next one, please. Now, regarding data, this I have just shown for illustrative purposes. Like 1961, since 1961, we are recording climate data here. So these are the extreme rainfalls in May month. And as you can see, it's extreme rainfalls, basically the frequency is increasing in recent times. Go to the next one. Now, stormwater drains which are to be designed, most of the places where the flooding is happening, they are not scientifically designing it. This is what we have found out. We were also doing the same thing till about 2018. Last 5 years, we have started, there are various methods which I have written here. These are well-known methods. For Indian conditions, it's recommended to use something known as rational method. I have given basically it gives you some idea about if the quantum of rain is concentrated within a very few minutes or say within 1 hour, you require stormwater drainage of a different kind. If the same quantum is distributed over 24 hours, you require drainage of different kind. Go to the next one. Now, go to the next one, please. We have also done submergence modeling, previous one, submergence modeling or inundation modeling of our city using different scenarios, which was there in the previous slide. And this present slide, it shows basically the central zone of the city. These red dots represent the flood pumps which we have installed according to our modeling. There are 18 of them which have capacity of 0.25 million to 1.2 million gallons per hour. And they are basically discharging the flood water, the storm water from the low-lying areas to the 2 channels. The blue are, the upper one is a canal and lower one is a river. And it discharges through underground delivery pipelines which extend sometimes till 2-3 kilometers. So this is being done. Go to the next one, please. And this is what we are doing, a real-time monitoring of all our flood pumps and flood prone areas through integrated command and control center. This center is not specifically built for this purpose. This has city surveillance system in which we provide CCTV cameras all over the city. This controls other things also like traffic, solid waste, everything is controlled from here, but we are using this for this particular purpose also. So this gives us information on what is happening in the flood prone areas during rains. It's real-time monitoring, happens 24/7. They're dedicated manpower there. We also monitor the outlet of the flood pumps to make sure that they are actually functioning and to keep a log of response time for future performance audit. So these are a few things I wanted to share from Agartala. That's all from my side. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. I think this is very interesting, and this will be available to all our participants here and also those who join online. I think it just concludes the panel discussion. So I really would like to thank all the panelists for their insight, observation. I mean, in summary, if I have to do it in one sentence, I still believe that yes, we have uncertainties, we have complexities in and around data and its availability, but I think it also, we heard that there is a lot of access and availability, and if we make use of it judiciously, and if we make use of it with a lot of inclusiveness and others, perhaps we can improve our decision-making system slowly. And I would again recommend you to look at the ESCAP portal because it really provides a lot of opportunities for us to get a lot of the data. I think the last segment I will actually ask by my colleague from ESCAP, Dr. Umar Asheka, are you still there? Dr. Umar, are you there?
Yes, so this is Suchi Smita from CDRI. Dr. Mahesh had to step out for a bit, so I'm just stepping in to conduct the Menti quiz.
Okay, thank you very much, and thank you very much you are there, and maybe you can introduce your name as well, and then please start the survey.
Yeah, I'm Suchi Smita. I also work with CDRI with Dr. Mahesh. Also working with him on some of the issues that CDRI works on that Dr. Mahesh mentioned in his presentation. So this bit actually we just wanted to have a quick interaction with the audience, and we have about 5-6 questions which we will put across through the Mentimeter, and then we'll request all the participants to actively participate and share their views on the different questions that we have for them. To start with, if I can request the participants to log on to menti.com and enter the code 7198876. Let me just share my screen so that you can also see it. I hope my screen is visible. We'll give it a few seconds. Menti.com, and the code is 7198876. We'll have started logging in, just a couple of seconds more, and then we can come to the first question. Okay. So moving to the first question, which is so the first question is which city are you from? So if the participants can indicate which cities are represented here in the audience today. And we'll give this a few seconds for the audience to respond. Great. So we have quite a few responses and we are covering quite a few cities across the globe. We'll move to the next one. So the next question is, what are the hydromet hazards that you've experienced in the last 5 years? So extreme rainfall and heat waves, I think these are some of the hazards that most of us have been experiencing across the globe, and riverine floods, of course, extreme rainfall, heat waves, riverine floods. Okay. The next question is, if you could indicate the hazards for this, usually you receive alerts or warnings from the urban local bodies or from the authorities. So interesting. I mean, so extreme rainfall alerts are available, heat wave alerts are available, cyclone alerts are available. Very few have said that there are no alerts available, but I mean, what's encouraging here is that people are getting early warnings and alerts on some of the most important hazards that cities usually face. Great. So the next one then is whether any of the warnings that you received had specific messages targeted towards any of the following stakeholders. So basically to get a sense of, you know, how customized these warnings are, or are these just general warnings? Okay, so the warnings, there are messages for general citizens, for schools, extremely important, for public transport, also for power. Telecom, we don't see any responses for hospitals. I think that may be a gap area where the healthcare sector really needs to be connected to the early warnings and how to take the early warnings forward. I think that may be an area that needs a little bit more focus. But yeah, and also, yeah, water management, of course. That again, and this has come up in the discussions today as well. So becomes a very important. Okay, so we have a response for hospitals also now. But in general, I believe citizens are receiving some of these messages, which is a good, encouraging sign, and a little bit more in terms of more connection with the healthcare sector. And what do you think should be the priority for improving the current status and enhance informed decision making? So should it be finance, better vulnerability assessment, local impact models, access to risk data, capacity development for different stakeholders, availability of technical experts? And as per the responses, it's pretty much everything. We need to focus on everything and give equal importance to each of these. Agreed, of course. Great, thank you. So that gives us some responses in terms of what the participants feel, what is the general mood in the room, and a lot of these things have already been discussed through the session, and a lot of takeaways for all the organizations and experts working in these sectors. I think that was the last question from us. Thank you, and I'll hand it back.
Thank you very much, and I think it's quite interesting. Now, the concluding session. Sohi, over to you, or Madhurima, would you like to give the concluding remarks? Or Sanjay is here.
think so.
Sanjay must be in
Must be.
three different rooms
Yes.
at the same time, like you and others. So maybe with you.
Sure.
Yeah,
I-
I would
I-
request you to. Thank you. Yeah.
I mean, I won't take too long. I know this meeting has already gone over like half an hour. But I think what came out today was a really, really interesting discussion, and the Menti quiz sort of kind of brought everything together in that how much we have done, but how much more work there is still left to do. And I really thank our partners, ADPC, CDRI, as well as all our participants here for sticking with us this long, because this was a very interesting conversation, and hopefully we can take this conversation forward in the coming days and months. So thank you very much for being here, and thank you for hanging on for another half an hour. Thanks. Have a wonderful afternoon. Thank you.